It's Saturday morning and Safia is busy cheering on the oldest of her 3 daughters. This Algerian businesswoman is a former athlete, javelin throwing, swimming, and scuba diving. Throughout the years, she's turned her passion for sports into a springboard for social change. Today, at the age of 48, she's the head of Géant, the country's first sports daily newspaper. But she wouldn't miss her kids' games for anything in the world.
Whenever my daughter plays in a match, I try my best to come and cheer her on.
Safia's fighter attitude goes way back. At the age of 18, and while Algeria was in the throes of a bloody civil war, she worked at what was at the time the country's only Berber newspaper. Her home was in Tizi Ouzou, a city about 100 kilometers east of Algiers.
At the time, I didn't wear a veil. I would wear shorts and tight clothes. I swam, I had long hair. We were in the middle of the Black Decade, but I didn't care. I was loving youth. I was an enthusiastic woman who wanted to move forward.
Sadly, her carefree years came to a screeching halt when her colleagues began disappearing one after the other. In the 1990s, Algeria plunged into a storm of blind and abject violence. Estimates for the number of fatalities range between 100 and 200,000 over the course of a decade.
Unfortunately, we couldn't stay there, with all the events happening in Kabylie at the time. Back then, journalists disappeared, and to this day, I've never seen them again. It was disappointing because our newspaper had a pretty big role.
Safia then decided to move to France to study journalism before returning to Algeria. She's now the head of a newspaper that employs 12 people in the newsroom and 18 correspondents across the country. Her daily paper covers all sports, a rare feat in Algeria. It took her 5 years to get to this stage. It was not until 2011 that she got her publishing permit from the government of Abdelaziz Bouteflika.
In our country, men have always taken the front row. Back when I decided to launch the paper, it was the only all-sports publication in Algiers. So to be the head of publishing was huge. I had colleagues telling me you're going to crash and burn within a year. Well, it's been 5 years and we're still here.
Only 7% of women in Algeria head a company. Safia's success has been a blessing for Oussama, a graphics designer. He's worked for her for 4 years, but the recent changes in Algeria have him worried.
I had a hard time finding a job, so I hope things will look up in the future. Democracy is too complicated for the Algerian system. Things haven't changed for the past 20 years. So they are not going to change in the next month, year, or even 10 years.
His colleague Islam believes today's youth doesn't have much of a choice. They will have to rely on the protest movement's rising stars.
Mustafa Bouchachi, Karim Tabou, we need people like them. We don't have any political experience. We didn't experience the 1990s.
Safia has a new challenge, trying to get young Algerians to talk about politics with older generations. Her stomping ground is Algiers' Kasbah, a historic district that is also a World Heritage Site.
What do you think about what's going on in the country?
Algeria has made some progress compared to before.
And do you hope the country will move forward?
Yes, and get rid of the mafia governing the country.
A businesswoman, but also a politically committed woman. She takes us through the Medina, where she organizes meetings between young Algerians and political activists.
I came to give a hand to the young people who live in the Kasbah. I do this for the future of Algeria because these young men and women are the future.
Organizations and activists meet at the headquarters of the Save the Kasbah group to discuss the country's future. The group is called National Organization of Young Algerians, and they're hoping for common sense and the return of the Algerian diaspora.
We're sick and tired of this rotten system. We need radical change with no negotiations.
75% of the country's population is young. We need to let them take over. They're smart. And there are Algerians all over the world.
They've always silenced them. They've never given them the opportunity to speak out.
Who?
The system, the people in power. When they see that there are people trying to shake things up, they do everything to discourage them. They either go abroad or face problems at home.
The director of the organization, though, has no doubt as to how this will all end.
The Algerian people will decide who becomes the next president.
How?
We'll vote.
The problem now is when. After initially postponing April's presidential election, Algeria's Constitutional Council has now also pushed back the vote that was scheduled for the 4th of July.